What's up, friends? Welcome back to Rooted Wisconsin, where we share the stories of the people driving Wisconsin business, community, and culture. We'll start our episode off the same way we do every single time, by thanking you. Thank you for your likes, your shares, your engagement with us. Thank you for leaving that review. Thank you for clicking follow or subscribe, whatever it is. Thanks for saying hi in the grocery store. However you interact with me and our content, we truly appreciate you and we make it for you. So thanks for coming back for another episode. Can't get started without shouting out our sponsors. Forward Beverage, fantastic Wisconsin-based company bringing NA to Wisconsin in a cool way. That's a question that a lot of people are posed at times, right? What do you get to drink when you go to a restaurant? What do you bring to your 4th of July party if it doesn't always have to be alcohol? And Paul and Amy with Forward Beverage are answering that question in a lot of cool ways with their soft cocktails and social seltzers. Also, great place to pick those up is Riverside Pizzeria in Ashwaubenon and probably coming to a neighborhood near you. Fantastic pizza. Can't say enough about the product. And Ryan, his family, and his team as people. Just an excellent place. You can stop in Ashwaubenon in the home of Riverside, Iron River right now, and look for Riverside coming to a neighborhood near you in the future. So, of course, a shout out to our sponsors. If you enjoy and engage with our content, please support them. They keep it coming for you. That all being said, time to get into our next episode and welcome Stephanie Grady. Thanks for coming.
Thank you so much for having me. I appreciate it.
Yeah, my pleasure. I can't wait to talk to you. I've been excited for this conversation for a while because I love learning about new things, and I particularly love seeing industries come to form and be shaped. And as a marketing guy, it's fascinating to see it all come to life with things that matter in the NIL realm. And that's kind of the obstacle you're trying to help people circumvent, right? Is the unknown, the vast unknown of NIL. Is that a good assessment?
Yeah, I would say so. You know, when it comes to name, image, and likeness, there's not a lot of industries that are brand new, right? I mean, I guess you could kind of look towards AI. That's something that's new and it's growing, and there's different companies that are developing because of it. When it comes to name, image, and likeness, it's only been around for 3.5 years at this point for student athletes. And so it is. I mean, people call it the Wild West, which it can be in a lot of respects, especially at the college level. But, you know, our focus is, we're not a sports agency. Our company is Influential Athlete. Our focus is helping these student athletes develop the personal and professional skill sets needed in order to actually be a successful player in the NIL game, to be as marketable as possible, to learn all of those soft skills that most 16, 17, 18-year-olds haven't learned yet, simply because they haven't had experience or exposure to the professional world yet. And so we help to level them up very quickly so they can take advantage of the very short window of opportunity that they have.
Super short, yeah. And that's so poignant because it compares in my head, and I didn't think of it till right now, but earlier Brandon asked how I got the sponsors for the podcast. Worked in broadcasting for 10 years. It's nothing that I even thought about. It's just something that I did, we have these conversations. I know what the end goal is in mind, but you equate that to a 17-year-old, kind of the same thing, right? Like, they are going to have a personal brand that's worth something. And if they've never been in a situation where that's been monetized, it's like, what, thrown to the wolves? Like, who would know how to make a decision or why? And that's why I've been intrigued to talk with you, because where does your passion start with it, and why is it the direction that you chose to go? Like, why do you want to be that bridge,
Yeah, so I was a former athlete. I was an internationally competitive figure skater for many, many years, and it was my sole identity. I mean, when I grew up, I did it since age 6. When I grew up, I had one plan, one dream, one identity. I was always Steph the skater. And then the bottom fell out. I got horribly injured, and I couldn't do it anymore. And so with these kids and these athletes, especially if they're competing at elite level. And when I say elite athlete, I mean basically varsity sports or higher, right? If you're going to college, you're most likely playing varsity in high school. So it's basically varsity in high school and higher. And most of these kids, especially if they're going to go D1, D2, their sport has been their thing for their entire lives, for as long as that they can remember. It is their identity. They are a volleyball player, a soccer player, a football player, a track athlete, whatever it might be. And, when it does come time for their athletic career to come to an end, which it does for everybody. There's always an end date, whether it's by choice, eligibility, or injury, like it was for me. There's always an end date. When it comes to that time, a lot of these athletes feel lost. They feel as though their identity, that thing that made them who they are and valuable to the world, is suddenly gone. And so instead of leaning into all of the amazing qualities and characteristics that they've built up over the years by training and competing at the high level that they have, instead of learning how to apply that to the next level of success for them professionally, it all gets wasted and lost.
Right.
The potential just kind of falls into that gap of development that they haven't been able to bridge at this point. And so what our company, Influential Athlete, does is it uses NIL as this cool new carrot that kind of dangles in front of these kids, this cool thing that makes them want to strive to be good at communicating, to be good at speaking to adults and pitching themselves and presenting and talking on social media, right? Because they see these other athletes doing it. As parents, we know that these skills are crucial in order to be successful at the professional world.
Yep.
So we use NIL as like, hey, you want to learn these cool things so that you can actually do that and be successful? All right. Yeah, make money with your NIL. That's great, right? Some kids make a lot, some kids make a little. What they all gain is invaluable education that they can then apply to that next level of success so that they can keep being a superstar in their next chapter after their athletic superstardom is over.
Yeah, that personal professional growth piece. Yeah. That's really cool. I wanted to talk about your time as a figure skater a little bit today. I know that was a significant portion. I've kind of read online a few different stories and things. That was a significant portion of your life. I didn't know about the injury though. I never came upon that. So what was your career like? I know a couple places I found said you've won gold medals. I don't know like what type or where, but like what was your figure skating career?
So I mean, my dream was to go to the Olympics. So skating is an Olympic sport, right?
Yep.
And so that was always my dream. And so that's always what I was training for. And it was something that I was, I got out of high school at 11:30 every day so I could travel an hour and a half both directions to the training facility. I trained at University of Delaware because I'm from the Philadelphia area. And that was it. I mean, it was my entire world. I didn't go to high school dances. I didn't, do sleepovers, go to parties. I mean, it was like my everything was skating. And it wasn't just a bad fall that happened for me. It was something that was an injury that started as stress fractures. I didn't really say anything about the pain that I was in, just trying to push through, right? It was a good year. I couldn't, say anything because then they pulled me from the ice for 6 weeks. And it was just one little warm-up thing that I was doing. And I ended up shattering the right side of my pelvis. And with skating, I mean, that's an injury that doesn't really fully heal, right? And skating is such an impact sport in terms of the jumping. And that was it. And so once I kind of got that news from the doctors, it was like, I mean, I was kind of in a state of shock for a few weeks, I feel like. And then I kind of went into this depressive state for a few months because, again, that thing that was my life is gone. And it finally was my parents who kind of, smacked me upside the head, not physically, but, mentally and emotionally, and just said, that's it, enough. Like, you have learned and developed so many skills from this sport, put them to use. You have so much more going for you than so many other people do. Leverage it, figure out how to do it. And so, my dad's a physician, and so I come from a very well-educated family, and, they kind of just taught me by exposure therapy of how to start applying what I had learned to the next level. And so I got very much into broadcasting, and then I had a 20-year career in television, which I've loved. But I felt like it was time for a new chapter for me. And I had learned at that point that you don't have to just have one identity, right? Like I thought my identity as Steph the skater would be the identity that would carry me through life. I'd be the number one coach in the world, training the best athletes in the world. Like that was my plan at 17 years old. And then the bottom fell out. So got into broadcasting, love TV, still love TV, love every aspect of it. I've been in Milwaukee for 10 years now. I thought I'd be here for three and out, and then I'd be, on to the next and better thing. But, here we are. We've raised 3 children here and we love it. But I just was ready to have another adventure and have another challenge come through. And I saw a problem in this NIL space. My husband comes from a background of athletic administration and coaching. Okay. And so this company, Influential Athlete, is really a combination of both of our experiences and expertises. So I come from obviously communication skills, on-camera performance, personal branding, overall personal presence. He comes from the side of like the politics of it all, athletic administration, what the parents, require from their schools and what they expect from their coaches and things along those lines. And so when we started looking at this whole NIL industry starting to take shape, because we've been building this company quietly in the background for 2 years.
Yeah.
Before we decided to launch in October, we saw that there was a big gap in the marketplace because at the college level especially, all of these collectives have formed at these different universities, right? And these collectives, I try to explain it to people, like, what are they? I keep hearing these weird words. A collective is basically like this third-party arm of a university that's been created. Think like booster clubs, but it's like at a totally different level, right? Mm-hmm. And they pool money from a lot of different resources, from rich alumni, from local businesses, from other, people who care about their athletic department. And then they use this pool of money to recruit talent, right? They're not paying them, though, to play football. They're paying them to show up to 3 autograph signings because they can't be paid for play, right? There's all these rules that exist, and they'll probably change in the future, but this is how we are now. And so when it comes to these collectives, they care about the 2 money-making sports, football and men's basketball. And so for female athletes, they're kind of just left high and dry, and they're incredibly underserved at the college level. And so we see this as a problem, and we wanted to help provide that solution and help bridge that gap for them. So we teach them how to do these things, what to do, what to say in order to get the most success when it comes to maximizing their NIL opportunities. And we've been really successful with all the athletes that we worked with so far. It's been awesome to see the transformation and to start seeing them secure those wins. And even more than that, realize the value they have.
Yeah.
Outside of just being an awesome volleyball player. That's the most beautiful thing. And they always say that first. When I always do the testimonials after they go through our Influential Athlete Academy, it's not like, I got myself like 7 deals and it's never that. It's, I realized how valuable I am, and I can't wait to see what else I have to give to the world. And I'm like, I feel like a proud mom, know?
Yeah, well, you probably see yourself in it, back to that situation, right? When you had to find your value outside of something that had identified you your entire life. Yeah.
It was a problem, and there was no solution for it. And so we've created the solution, even though NIL didn't exist back then 20 years ago, right? It was something that I was like, ooh, this is awesome, right? But how do these kids take advantage of it unless they're having just money thrown at them because they're the number 1 quarterback across the country, right? So, it's been awesome. I mean, I was just reading an article today about a high school field hockey player in Maine who's secured a half dozen NIL deals as a high schooler with the local coffee shop or the maple syrup producer in Maine, So it's not just these big brands that are making the deals. It's a lot of small businesses. And small businesses, you should listen, because this is an opportunity for growth for you, that you can tap into the influence of these influential people at a local level. And I'm not just talking social media influence. I mean, these people are influential in their local communities, right? Mm-hmm. Tap into that. There's eyeballs watching them, If they're your patient at your dentist office, stick them on a sign, stick them on a mailer, because there's power in that.
Yep. Yeah, the ones with Foresight are thinking about that. Actually, Riverside Pizza, our sponsor, sponsors a UWGB basketball player.
Love it.
That is from very close to where the first location was. Like, it makes complete sense to a marketer. And he was very forward thinking in that. I thought it was the coolest.
It's awesome.
He did a special where I think he wears number 3, and like he did a number 3 special with it, like an awesome marketing campaign. And just having the foresight to think about that, of like how, I mean, I don't know that there is a better way to put it than the influence they have on communities. It's awesome. And I think that's a place I wanted to talk about a little bit today, because in some instances, NIL has gotten an immediately, like, I don't know if bad name is the right way to put it.
Oh, you can say it. Bad name. Like, it's ruining college sports, right? Of course,
Which, there's an argument there to be had about the high dollar main sports that you saw. But I think the overall capacity of good that it can have is going to far outweigh that as soon as it gets some time to develop and mature and turn into what it's going to be. Sure, right now it probably is kind of a mess in some places, but anything new is going to be.
Right.
The value to me and why I've always been a proponent of it, of college athletes getting paid, is because the demands that it takes to become a proficient college athlete along with a student, your earning potential outside of it is very minimal. Like,
you're not getting internships. You're
Yeah.
not even taking summer jobs.
right.
Right?
So you're not only are you not making money, you're not taking the steps that other students and athletes are in their careers to get those building blocks. So I am all for it. And I'm never one to kind of shun the first bad thing anyway. Like, I want to see, like, how can we make this better?
Yeah.
So what's your view on the industry overall? How is it operating? And where do you maybe prognosticate it going?
There's a lot of shaking out that needs to happen.
Yeah.
And like you said, I mean, it's brand new. There's nothing that's kind of set in stone across the board. And that's what's created that Wild West that people keep talking about, right? The chaos of the transfer portal at the college level. And it is very chaotic. And in a lot of ways, you know, certain programs at certain universities are getting screwed over when they're expecting their star player to come. And then the day before the first practice, they get a much bigger offer from another university. And then they're out the door and on their way to... So it is a little crazy right now. I mean, the transfer portal has always existed, right? There just hasn't been dollars tied to that. It's always just been full ride scholarships, right? So if you get a full ride to one place, you're probably going to get a full ride to another. So then it comes down to like the actual programs and, you know, how comfortable you feel there. There's a huge lawsuit that's making its way through the judicial system right now. And it was supposed to come to a settlement or a judgment, you know, this quarter. Is probably going to go into next quarter because there's a lot of universities and conferences and students that are jumping in on this whole thing. It's called NCAA versus House. House is the last name of an athlete who originally filed this lawsuit a couple of years ago. This lawsuit is going to shape on a more permanent basis the NIL landscape when it comes to rules involved, salary caps that universities will have, right? In terms of, like, think of it like that. They don't call it that, but think of it like just like a professional sports team. All right, you know, Penn State.
It's what's needed.
You get $20 million to disperse amongst your athletes, right, each year. And so this is what's going to come out of it. There's roster caps that are going to be coming out of it too. And these collectives, it'll be interesting to see what happens with these collectives. If they end up going away, or if they stick around and kind of just take on a new form. Because part of this lawsuit is focused on, you know, these universities are using these collectives to basically like kind of skirt the rules a little bit. Like, oh, the university's not paying these kids, the collective's paying these kids, you know? And a lot of conferences, especially your Power Five, are like, we all know what we're doing. We're not kidding anybody. Like, let's allow universities to actually pay these kids now, instead of trying to like skirt the rules. Let's just be fully transparent with this stuff, which is where the salary cap comes into play and all that sort of stuff. So it'll be interesting based on how this judgment goes. It also will back pay D1 athletes for 10 years.
Dang, really?
It's interesting. It'll be interesting to see what happens with the NCAA if they end up filing for bankruptcy or not, because I mean, you're talking billions
that's wild.
of dollars, right? And so the next few months will kind of determine a lot in terms of what's going to be happening at the college level. At the high school level, there's been this trickle-down effect, obviously, ever since the judgment came from the Supreme Court back in 2021. There's only 11 states right now that don't allow high school athletes to make money with their NIL. Wisconsin is one of them.
One of them, yeah.
This time last year, that number was double. But every couple of months, more and more states jump on board because they have to. And it's because of the ruling that the Supreme Court made. The Supreme Court ruled the way that it did against the NCAA in the NCAA versus Alston case. That was the case that made it to the Supreme Court that made NIL a thing. They said, look, these kids have a right to publicity just like any American citizen. It was a right that was established back in the 70s. You can't tell these kids they can't make money off of themselves.
Yep.
Sorry, you can't do that. Well, the same thing applies to high school kids. So there's been this trickle-down effect. So either it's the high school athletic organizations, the associations that are just changing the rules of eligibility at the high school level, which is happening in a bunch of places. A lot of times it's a lawsuit that forces some sort of temporary injunction by a judge, which just happened in North Carolina because it wasn't allowed. A football family filed a lawsuit because the kid was really good and he was getting offers but couldn't, monetize them. Judge came in and said, you can't do that. And so now it's turned into a craziness because there's no parameters set around these high school athletes. The way the WIAA is coming at this, so there's a big vote that's happening April 25th at the WIAA's annual conference. The same vote happened last year, and NIL was voted down for high schoolers. All the ADs from the 514 member schools across the state, the majority said, we don't want it yet. Because they didn't really understand, they felt as though it was moving very fast. They didn't really understand what the language actually meant. Our role in our exclusive partnership with the WIAA for the past several months has been educating all the ADs, superintendents, and principals at all the 514 high schools across the state on what this proposed language is, line by line, what each line means.
What a lift.
The prohibited activities, and the repercussions if they don't pass it, which will be litigation. All it takes is one family to file a lawsuit, and there's already been several families that have called the WIA's office threatening that. What does that do? That costs everybody a ton of money. It's going to be ruled one way. It already has in every other state, so there's no secret there, right? The way it's going to go. So it's either going to end in a lawsuit or it's going to end in state lawmakers, the legislature, drafting their own high school NIL legislation. And they're not experts when it comes to high school. They're not experts when it comes to high school sports. And so the way the WIA's language has been written, there's a lot of prohibited activities. There's actually 7 that are outlined in the language. But what it does is it, number one, protects student-athlete integrity. It protects the integrity of the high schools. It protects competitive equity, which is a really huge thing across the state. Any AD you talk to, it's all about competitive equity. It protects undue influence. So somebody who's an alumni of a high school can't say, oh, hey, football player Johnny at that high school, I'll pay you to come play for our school. Can't do that because there's an association, there's a vested interest that alumni has in the athletic program of the school. So there's a lot of parameters put around the high school language that doesn't exist at the college level.
Yep.
And so the chaos that people see at the college level, everyone's like, oh, we don't want that at high school. Well, you won't have it here because it won't be allowed here because of these guardrails that are put in place to make sure it doesn't happen that way.
Got it.
Yeah.
That's super interesting. Yeah. And I think de facto it would probably be tamed by the medium anyway, right? But then having that in place on top of it is a containment of sorts. Yeah. That's super interesting. And that's the kind of stuff, like, I didn't know any of that. That's the kind of stuff I was really excited to learn because I haven't really delved into like that space, like the lower levels or like even the high school space.
Yeah. There's a lot of misconception when it comes to NIL. Simply because it's brand new, people only hear about the 6-7 figure deals that are being done because that's what you see on the news. That's what you hear on Sports Center, right? Of course, right? Yeah. I mean, I come from news. I know why that's in the news. And there's, Johnny who's making $500 from the chiropractor's not making the news, right? But that's such a small sliver of the total number of deals being made. Last year, $1.7 billion was paid out in student-athlete NIL money. Insane. 3.5 years in, almost $2 billion, right?
Yeah.
And that's high school and college. A very slim piece of that pie are the 6-7 figure deals. But that's what we hear about. So everyone thinks, oh, everyone's getting paid all this money. It's not, but, I always use this guy as an example because he's an amazing example. This kid, Jack Betts, he went to Amherst, played wide receiver for the football team at Amherst. Amherst is a D3 school. First year NIL was allowed, he had 35 NIL deals. 35. So even if it's only a couple of $100, you stack a bunch of those together, you can make yourself a pretty penny. And on top of that, he's pitched himself how many times? He's interviewed how many times? Yeah. He's negotiated deals how many times? He's executed on them how many times, right? You want to talk about having a chock-full resume to go into your professional world, the networking that you've done, the relationships that you've built, the personal and professional skills that you've developed through that process. I mean, that kid's like taking it to the bank, even if it's not money, if it's something else, right? It'll pay dividends down the way. Yeah,
the savviness to be able to handle those situations and have experience in those situations is invaluable.
Oh, no question.
Yeah. So, and I want to shine a highlight on it because I think you mentioned it earlier, but your focus is on female athletes, right?
It is. So when
Okay.
we do our private coaching, so our signature program is called Influential Athlete Academy. And my goal is to get these kids leveled up in terms of their skill sets fast. They don't have 6 months to spend with me, right? Their window of opportunity is short. So you want to make sure that they're able to maximize it as much as possible and as quickly as possible. So our academy is 4 weeks. They meet with me twice a week for a total of 8 sessions. And then the 9th and final session, we deliver a very custom, what we call NIL Success Toolkit. It's like a 30-plus page document outlining their personal brand, their core messaging, their media contacts, their email templates, their professional style guides, and lastly, their pitch presentation, something that they can send to a business that they can tweak and customize because it's all templated out, that they can send to a business to be like, this is your likely problem. This is how I can be the solution, and here's some collaboration ideas for us to actually make it possible. So it sets them up to be incredibly professional and stand out from the pack of the thousands of other amazing athletes. So when it comes to our private coaching, we only work with females. And I like it that way. I'm the only one who does the private coaching at this point. There's a relatability factor. I was a former athlete, right? And so there's like that mentorship that comes into play, the advising role that I really love. And to be honest with you, girls make really good NIL partners. I mean, at 17 years old, they're just a little more mature than the guys out there. I mean, not across the board. I've worked with some really great guys too during our beta testing of our academy. But girls are just, they're a little bit more professional. They're a little bit more mature at that age.
Ready for that opportunity.
I would say so. And they're just a little bit more open to kind of accepting the challenge of learning behavioral skills and the practice that's needed in order to master those things. Because I can't just tap them and say, you're a great speaker. No, I mean, they're like, you know, I mean, that's what it is at 17 years old. So it takes practice in order to master those sorts of things. And so they're just more generally, again, there's some great guys out there that I've worked with, but generally speaking, they're just better at those sorts of things. So when it comes to our private coaching, we only work with females at this point. That might change in the future, but as of now, we're focused solely on females and really helping to empower them. When it comes to us supporting high school athletic associations, conferences, individual schools, because we work with all of them too and contract with them, we obviously provide education and resources for male and female athletes, no question, and their families, because that's a huge piece of it, especially at the high school level. College, they've already kind of left the nest. They're kind of more doing things on their own. High school, the parents are very involved, and we want them to be. And so schools contract with us to come in twice a year to do in-person workshops to really give these kids value on how to navigate the space safely and successfully. And then a lot of these schools, and this is going to be happening in Wisconsin pretty soon here once the vote goes through, they're going to need to create some sort of NIL tab on their website or conference's website where they can just start directing people when they have questions. Oh, we have that answer over there. You know, businesses, donors, we have the answers over there. Well, who's going to populate that stuff? They're not experts in this space. They can't just, flip a switch and become an NIL expert overnight. And so they just contract with us. We do all the heavy lifting. We provide we alleviate the administrative burden for them and just provide them with all of that. So it's easy for them to do that. And they know that they're doing things compliantly in the right way.
Yeah, nice. What's up, friends? Beautiful winter day in Wisconsin. We're one perch away from a limit, enjoying a nice forward beverage, nice warm shack. What else can you ask for? Try out some forward beverages. Check out their website. Grab them wherever they're available near you. There was one piece in there that brought up a thing that I wanted to chat about. I was wondering, in your experience in working with the athletes, is it more, are you seeing more, where does the interest come from? Like, are you coaching athletes how to go out and pitch themselves to organizations, or are organizations reaching out to them that they don't know how to handle? Of course, it's going to be both, but like, what's the temperature of the industry in that space?
I think it kind of depends on the influence of that athlete. And again, I'm not just talking social media influence. This is in terms of how influential they are. How strong is their personal brand, right? You're the number one quarterback recruit across the country. You're probably going to have businesses falling into your lap.
Yep.
But for the 99.9% of student athletes out there, there's 8 million high school athletes every year across the country. 500,000 of them go on to play their sport at the next level, D1, D2, D3. So there's a lot of them out there. Most want to take advantage of what NIL has to offer. Most won't because they don't know how to, right? And so something we say in our company is NIL isn't something that happens to you. It's something you now have the opportunity to take advantage of if you know how. And so we teach our athletes how to identify the businesses to pitch themselves to, number one. Before they even make a pitch, make a phone call, send an email, how do you know what places to actually approach, right? Because, I mean, think about how many businesses there are that you potentially could. And again, people think NIL, they think Nike, Adidas, Gatorade, State Farm. Sure, those are great to work up to if, but start small. There's so much more power in starting small within the communities where you live, where you have influence. And so we kind of go through a really rigorous process of first identifying categories of businesses, everything from boutiques to cryotherapy to car dealerships to, smoothie shops. I mean, anything that they feel like, oh yeah, I go to this one place that I love so much, or, I love drinking these forward beverages, or I love bubbler, or whatever it might be. Like, we have them kind of identify categories of businesses, and then we drill down. Okay, let's find 5 specific businesses for each category. Well, now we've developed a list of about 100 businesses, right? So now we have our list. We have the contact information for all the businesses, who the owners are, what their LinkedIn pages are, what their Instagram pages are. They're following them, they're commenting on their posts to kind of get a little bit of traction, to be like, hey, I'm actually interested in your product and I actually like it and use it or wear it. And then it's a matter of the approach, right? And if you can go in person and present yourself in person and go walk into a business and talk to the owner, that's going to be the best way to do it versus sending an email or making a phone call. Some places, because there's a lot of, e-market companies out there that people want to pitch to, and that's great to do, and they certainly can. But if you can walk into a business and say, hey, my parents and I have been coming here for the last 10 years. We love what you guys do. I'm an athlete in the area. You're gonna come to one of our volleyball games? Yeah, I'm the libero, whatever, for the volleyball team. Oh yeah, I've seen your games, whatever. Would you ever think about potentially doing an NIL deal with an athlete? Because I have a really engaged audience when it comes to social media. I'm also really involved in some organizations around here. I really think that based on kind of the products that you are selling or the services you're selling, that I could help get your stuff in front of more eyeballs, a very targeted audience, right? A focused audience that they're trying to drill into. So it starts with that conversation and how to have that conversation. And so we walk them through different frameworks on, you compliment and connect, and then you offer value, and then you pitch your, whatever it might be, like how our framework works. And then it's just a matter of, the following up, and when do you present the contract, and how many different types of offers. A lot of times with these small businesses, you have to paint the picture for them. They've heard of NIL. They've thought that might be interesting, but they have no idea how to do it. And they're kind of scared of it. I mean, contracting with a 16, 17-year-old kid, are they going to execute on what we're saying? So a lot of times these NIL deals start simply with discounted or free products or services. Start small. Do that for 6 weeks. See if there's an ROI on that. If there is, you're following through, you're exceeding expectations, well, a more lucrative deal could come down the pipeline for you, or you could use that deal to show another company, hey, look what I did with them. They were really happy with this. You could see it, and then it's a snowball effect. Getting that first yes is the hardest, just like getting your first job is the hardest. Once you have something to fall back on, once you have a little bit of resume built up, it's much easier to get a business owner to be like, all right, I'll give you a shot. Let's do something.
Yeah, absolutely.
So we coach them through all of that.
It's fascinating to hear, from the lens of, being a marketing person, you're trying to teach them to be a marketer in a very condensed
for themselves
portion of time.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yep.
Kind of the basic selling process, and what does your personal brand mean, and
how do you out?
Leverage relationships and sell an engaged audience. I mean, that's what I do with the podcast. We don't have thousands of listeners to every episode, but we have a very engaged audience that are actionable.
Yeah.
Oh, that's so good. Well, I could talk about NIL all day, but I also wanted to shift gears a little bit. Having gone through a similar transition as you, of leaving a career in broadcasting that at one point my goal was to do that my entire career. And I had goals and stuff lined up that I ended up reaching. And then one day it just didn't satisfy me anymore.
That's what happens.
Yeah. So what was that like for you? Was that a long decision? Was it a short decision? There's a lot of emotions and thought that goes with that.
Yeah.
Walk me through it a little bit.
My goal with broadcasting was always to work for what I like to call the mothership, okay? To work for one of the major networks. And when I was growing up, 17, 18, 19 years old, and I first got into broadcasting, and the reason why I got into it is because when I was skating, the coaches that I had trained us on how to speak to the camera, right? Because you can really, the camera's a double-edged sword. You can make yourself look great, but you can also do a lot of damage, right? And so they trained us on how to do that, which I was really fortunate because most athletes don't get that sort of training, right?
Yeah.
So I had kind of this knack for, number one, I was a performer because that's what I always did in terms of like an individual sport, and skating, it's very much a performance. But I knew how being on camera worked. And so I got into broadcasting, and my plan was to always work for like CNN or CNBC or Fox News or, back in the day when I was a teenager, CNN was like the network to work for. It just was. It was the first 24/7 news channel, like all of that, right? I remember all of that. And number one, the news industry has vastly changed in the 20 years since I've been in television. Just the competitive nature of it, how many options people have. And so my goal when I came to Milwaukee, this was my fourth stop, right? Because that's how TV works. You start in an itty bitty market. I was in Erie, Pennsylvania, making literally no money.
Yes.
My parents were like, is that for a month that you get paid that? And I was like, that's my year contract. They're like, what? You can't take that. And I was like, I have to, this is my way in, right?
Yeah.
So, you start small. I moved to Milwaukee, expected to be here for 3 years, and then to kind of bounce on to the next bigger and better thing. Fox 6 at Milwaukee treated me so well. I had such a wonderful experience there for my 10 years that I was there that they kept me. And I put a lot of credit to our former GM, the guy who hired me. He was there up until about a year and a half ago, Chuck Steinmetz. He was wonderful. And he made me feel valued. And he gave me contracts that I really couldn't say no to. And that was a good thing, right? I certainly explored and had various, networks come and discussions with them and things. But number one, those jobs don't pay what they used to. So that dream of $1 million contracts doesn't exist anymore because the advertisers aren't there anymore. The industry has changed. Number two, I now have 3 children. And I don't want to go to Ukraine when the war breaks out. Go to the border when there is a huge migrant surge. I don't want that quality of life. There are so many people who do. If I was single or just newly married with no children, that would be a different story. But I just don't want that for my life. And so I had to turn down a lot of those things. And I kind of got to the point where I was like, I've hit the ceiling. Yeah. I've said no to all the things that I thought that I wanted before, what I dreamed of getting to, like my pinnacle. I've already said no to those things. So now what? And this is really something that made it hit me where it hurt. Was I sat down with our GM to look at our numbers. So as you know, with television, you get Nielsen numbers every night, right? Where they tell you how many viewers watch, the percentage of market, all that sort of stuff. In the 10 years that I was at Fox 6, we lost 70% of our viewership. And they didn't go to Channel 12. They're just gone. Gone, right? Because there's so many options to choose from. People don't have local channels anymore. They're just streaming everything. They're getting news right off their phone. And so I'm 38 years old. I have a lot of working years ahead of me. And so great. I had another great 3-year contract that was put on my lap. Okay, but what's the environment going to be like in 3 years? What's it going to be like in 5 years? And I didn't want to stick around to find out. And I've always been very entrepreneurial. I've always kind of had things that we've done kind of on the side. And I really wanted something that was my own, that I could call the shots, that I could have a business to run and be the CEO of. And we've had a lot of iterations of even this company since it first kind of came into our brains when we were thinking about it. A lot of iterations, because that's what happens until you find something that's really good and worth it. And I was working, I mean, I had 3 kids, full-time job in news, which is not easy. I mean, you're working more than 40 hours a week, let's just be honest, and working full-time building this company in the background, quietly, having everyone that we're working with signing NDAs to make sure that like nothing, because I didn't know if I was going to leave news. I didn't know if I was just going to crumble it up in a ball, toss it in the trash can and be like, nah, let's just stick to news, right? And so I had to protect everything. And the day that I told my agent that I was done, he was like, why aren't you signing the contract? Like, this is a good, what's the holdup? I've gotten you everything you wanted. What's the holdup? And I'm like, well, there's something I'm not telling you, you know? And I told him, and he was like, look, if anyone's going to be successful doing their own thing, it's going to be you. And it's been totally scary, right? I mean, having your own thing with all the pressure versus having like a paycheck every 2 weeks, no matter how good you are or how bad you are, right? It still comes every 2 weeks. It's a scary thing, but taking that leap off that cliff was the best thing that I ever did. And I thought, because I love TV. It wasn't like I left TV because I hated it. I loved it. I still love it. And I thought that, okay, I'll have a few weeks where I'll feel like I'm on vacation and I'll, you know, it won't really hit me. And then it'll probably hit me and I'll probably kind of regret it a little bit, or at least kind of go through those ebbs and flows of feelings. Not even for a second.
No.
I left October 15th and I drive by the station to take my daughter to gymnastics and I'm like, oh, thank goodness. You know, like I'm just so much happier where I am. I'm not making nearly the money I was yet, right? We're only 3 months in, yet. But at the end of the day, that's not what life is all about, right? All my kids are in school now. I go to work at 2:00. I used to be with them all morning when they were little, which was great. You know, I'd have them all day. Then we have a nanny come for a few hours to kind of bridge the gap between like when I left, my husband came home. But now I would see them in for an hour in the morning and then I wouldn't see them until the next day. And I wasn't cool with that. Mm-hmm. You know, I wanted something different.
Yeah, that has to be such a valuable piece of it. I assumed as much, that it opens up so much more space for you as a mom. Mm-hmm. That's awesome.
It does. And my daughter gets to see, right? Like I'm speaking next Saturday at the Women's Sports Symposium in Brookfield. I'm one of the featured speakers there. And she's 6, but she's very much a performer too. And for her, and who knows how much she's actually going to like take from it. But for me, in my perspective, you know, for her to be able to see me doing things like that and speaking in front of an audience and helping these girls have these transformations and be successful, you know, and using my value to give them value, I hope that she gleans something from that, you know, and she is like, all right, I want to do that sort of a thing. So
yeah, they take more than you think continually.
Good and bad, right?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, both sides of the spectrum. That's fascinating, though. I assumed as much, and I think a lot of people in that space are, you know, one, deciding whether they're going to be on the before or are they going to be after the crash happens, and then like what does that end up doing? Because I think most people still do love it. I think most people still do. Like I still enjoyed being on the radio when I was on the radio, but the cup filling wasn't happening. And then what you were talking about having a good, you know, GM organizational structure, support system in place, that's gradually falling apart in places as well. Our station went through an acquisition, and I'll never forget when I decided that it was finally going to be the final like next step. The actual phrase came out, you know, we're not going to really do raises.
Oh, then what are we going to do?
Yeah. And like my immediate thought was, boy, I'm really not going to do working here for too much longer then. Yeah. And it's the best thing that ever happened to me too. Like, so I don't think that exhale, I don't think that'll go away for you. At least it didn't for me. And now I started this because I get to do my favorite part of it that doesn't have all of that other stuff that comes along with it.
Well, it's cool because I feel like I'm in front of the camera so often, you know, whether it's on the radio or articles in the newspaper or on podcasts like this, that I still get to utilize that part of me that I love. I mean, I'm teaching, I'm performing for my students when I'm talking and working with them, right? I mean, I just recorded an entire online course that we're going to be launching soon that I bought myself a teleprompter. Like I plugged it in and started reading. I was like, oh, I feel like I'm at home again, you know? And so that performance aspect hasn't left. It's just in a different way. I'm just on stages versus being in a studio with a camera, you know? And so, you know, that part of me, I still get to put that to use, which I really like.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's funny. The prompter's probably like a point of like comfort, right? Like you had one for so many years. That was it. Why not bring it in your next venture?
I took as a suggestion a lot of times. My producers would be like, Steph, read the words. It's not a suggestion. I'm like, well, I'm the final filter. I get to call the shots because you're not out there. I am. Right?
You don't get to say it. That's awesome though. And boy, it had to be a process doing that. Probably tough, the behind closed doors part of it at times.
Oh,
right?
it was, because I'm somebody who likes to like put stuff out into the universe, because when I put it out there, then I have to do it, right?
Yeah.
Like I'm so type A that, well, I said that I was going to do it. I have to do it. People know about it, right? I can't fail now.
Same.
And then my husband would be like, Steph, don't say anything. What are you doing? And I'm like, well, you know, it's like, no, he's like, I'm trying to protect you right now, you know? So it was hard. I mean, I still have the first iteration of our course that we didn't even know what we were calling it at that point. We didn't even know who we were serving at that point, right? We didn't have like a focused like avatar, if you will. But it's on, I took a box, an Amazon box, and I cut it up and I taped it to another one. So it's like this big cardboard thing that takes up like a wall space, and there's all this like loose leaf paper I look like a serial killer with like arrows and colors and highlights, and Joe was like, are we gonna throw this away soon? And I'm like, I feel like this needs to be hung up like in the headquarters whenever we have a place, you know, and I'm not working out of my basement, you know. I feel like this was the first iteration of our business. He's like, okay, Steph, you know, and I'm like, you'll see. He's like, if we move, are we taking this? And I'm like, yes, we're taking this with us, you know.
Gotta get that thing framed.
I know, right? He's like, this is stupid, you know. And I'm like, it won't be. It'll be a gem one day.
Well, different people are motivated by different things. I like the visual stuff, and I'm a manifester too. Like I'll put things out into the world, and I firmly believe that whether that shifts how I approach it or how other people receive it, or a combination of both, there's some power to it. No doubt. You can speak things into existence.
No question. And I feel like, you know, I go a little bit and then I'm like, I'm stuck. I don't know where to go next. And then I go a little bit and it's, I mean, that's the life of the entrepreneur, right? Of like, you literally, it's like you're jumping out of the plane and trying to figure out how the parachute works all at the same time, right? And I feel that like to my core. But, you know, I'm a very faith-based person. I'm Catholic, and I've always felt this strong pull of like God kind of guiding me, and he won't do the work for you. Like, you know, pray to God like it depends on him, but work like it depends on you. I'm very like much in terms of that kind of like words and phrases and how that all kind of comes into fruition. But I feel as though, I like to say, and I tell this to my kids, he leaves breadcrumbs, right? And it's like, it's just a little peek of like, oh, that's the direction I should go. You don't know what the other breadcrumb is. You don't know what's on the other side of that. But as soon as you get to that breadcrumb, then another breadcrumb is left. And then another breadcrumb. And you just keep following the breadcrumbs. Like, be open to not knowing what that end result is going to be, but know that you're at peace walking in that direction. You might be terrified, you might be anxiety-stricken, but you're at peace because you feel like it's the right thing to do. You can't explain it. It's that gut feeling. And that gut feeling, for me, is God guiding me down the path that I'm supposed to be going down. You know what I mean? But again, he's not going to do the work for you. You got to work for yourself. You can't be like, oh, please let me be a millionaire. He's like, oh yeah, good job. You know, I'm not going to like open the sky and drop money on you.
Pray
like
for
figure it out.
1,000 breadcrumbs.
Right?
Yeah. So one other thing I want to touch on a little bit is you were here for 10 years. You said you're from Pennsylvania.
Yeah.
What endeared you to Wisconsin? Like, other than staying here for the gig, you could have done this business anywhere, right? Like, what keeps you here? And we are rooted Wisconsin. So what in your 10 years here, what have you been drawn into, I guess?
So I'm from Philly. The people here are a lot nicer. Like, I don't know how else to say it. I'll never forget when we moved here from Philly. I mean, we were in New York at the time when we moved here because my husband's from upstate New York. And I was, calling to get like homeowners insurance, and trying to figure out like when you're moving your whole life, you have to do all those things. And I remember like our insurance guy was like, oh, I got a great mechanic and I got this part. And I'm like, what is with these people? Like they're trying to like give me all their friends' phone numbers. Like, what is going on? Got here and I love going for walks, and I'd be walking down the street in my neighborhood, which is a very residential neighborhood. People would be like, oh, hi. And I'm like, what are they saying hi to me for? Like in Philly, like you don't make eye contact. Like you keep to yourself. You keep your eyes down. Otherwise, like you're at risk of getting shot. So, so people here, they're just genuinely nice. I mean, not everybody, right? We all have our bad apples.
Oh, yeah.
Wisconsin does too. And I've met a few of them. But for the most part, just the Midwest culture. So my dad's from Milwaukee. It was by pure coincidence that I ended up here. It was the job that brought me here, but it wasn't like we sought this out. I mean, there's only so many main anchor job openings across the country when you're looking, Yep. And my dad's from Whitefish Bay, born and raised, went to Madison for undergrad, went to Marquette Dental School. He went on to medical school because he's an oral surgeon. But my grandfather, who was a dentist in the area and then a professor at Marquette's Dental School, was still here. I mean, he passed 2 years ago now, but at 97 years old. And all of his family had kind of left. The closest is in Chicago. And so when we moved here with his great-grandson, who was 9 months old at the time, and then had 2 more great-grandchildren of his, it was such a great thing. You know what I mean? So it just, the stars aligned. Things happen for a reason. It was scary coming here, but we've really, I love the culture. I love the city. It's so easily accessible. You have professional sports teams that you can actually go to the games because they're not overly priced. There's so much good without having a lot of the bad. People complain about the traffic here, and I'm like, 10 extra minutes it took you? Oh, I'm sorry. 90 extra minutes on the Garden State Parkway. Give me a break.
It's funny you say that. I lived in Milwaukee for 7 or 8 years. And it's been a while since then. And driving into town today, I was like, man, I don't miss this. So I was one. I mean, Green Bay is a different bug.
Oh, totally
I can get
different.
anywhere in 15 minutes.
Yeah,
I like that.
Well, it's like you're like now another step out from like metropolitan area, And I'm going that direction too. Like I'm like, just give me that 20 acres of land in Montana where I don't have to see anybody,
Mm-hmm.
Everyone's like, really? You'd be okay with that? And I'm like, I just need a computer to work. So
Yeah. Well, and that has to be a nice feeling because there's so much pressure that comes along with that industry too, especially when it's compressing or condensing, where like there's a good chance that you're not going to be the one who decides when the tenure is over, if you decide to stick it out.
And where you're going to go next and what city it's going to be,
Right.
know? And we've been away from our families because my family lives on the East Coast, so does my husband's, and all of our siblings live over there. They're starting to have kids and get married now and stuff. And so that's been a struggle. Being away and being literally on our own out here for 10 years, raising a family, both working full time, it's hard. We've relied heavily on nannies. We've been fortunate to have some really, really great ones who have worked for us. But it's something that still tugs at my heartstrings that, my parents aren't going to be around forever. My husband's parents aren't going to be around forever. I want to develop relationships with my siblings' kids. Every vacation day we were taking was to fly to see our families. They're always a plane ride away. And so that's getting old. Mm-hmm. And so I don't know. Our company is nationwide, so it's not that we have to stay here in Wisconsin.
Yep.
Obviously, we've been leaning heavily on the reputation and credibility that I've built
Absolutely.
with what I've done
Yep.
In this market, as well as my husband's in terms of being an athletic director for so many years. And so we've leaned on that to start. We haven't spent a dime on marketing when it comes to our company. It's all been those transfers of trust, which have really been a beautiful thing because it goes to show that building a solid reputation, that people like you and feel like you're good people to work with, has been a really nice thing because it's allowed us to be as successful as we have been so far. But at some point, you can only tap into that so much before you have to start, putting marketing dollars out there and getting eyeballs on your stuff. And we can do that from anywhere.
Yeah.
And so getting back closer to family, as much as I do not want to move to the East Coast because there's too many people, the taxes are too high, like just all of it, right? Family outweighs it all. You know, it just like erases all the cons off the board.
Yeah. It's interesting to hear that because there's such a cool alignment with like you leveraging your personal brand and what you're trying to help others do.
I know. And then I'm like, all right, see you later, brand. No one's going to know. My son goes to me, my son who's 11. My husband was like, are you excited for mom to not work in TV anymore? And he's like, no. And he's like, really? She's going to be home. You've never had her home at night, like to put you to bed. And he goes, yeah, but I'm not going to be famous anymore. My husband's like, honey, you're not famous.
You're not, yeah.
But then when we were talking about the potential of moving closer to our families, my son's like, Mom, you're just going to be like a normal person to people. Like, you're not going to be able to do that. I'm like, I don't know. Sometimes that's going to be nice, you know?
I think that's almost undersold at times. It's funny. Dan, the producer, laughs to this day about this story. The radio show I used to host was really geographically popular. And he was driving through the area that I lived in one time. And we went out to like brunch. And like everybody knew me in there. And like he still laughs about it to this day because they never, like people don't see that come to life usually.
Right.
And it's like, I really lean into not having that. There's like, the pressure of like existing is less.
Oh, I've stopped caring. I'm like, I don't care how you see me in the grocery store. You know, I feel like with 3 kids and being a mom and like working as much as I did, like I just was like, yep. Hi, so nice to meet you. Thanks for watching. I appreciate it. Sorry I look like this, but you know, I'm a normal person. Yeah. Like I haven't showered in 3 days. No, I'm just kidding. Wash my hair. I've showered, but you know.
I love it. Well, it was awesome spending some time with you.
I'm sure we could probably keep talking for like another couple of hours, but.
Definitely we could. Yeah. There's, between career alignments and passions and just trying to how you're trying to support people in a unique way. I just love, and good luck with everything.
Thanks.
I hope it just continues to blossom for you and turns into everything you want it to be.
I appreciate it. Influentialathlete.com. That's where you need to go. If you're looking for private coaching and you're a female athlete, schedule your free NIL consultation call, and no strings attached. We just get to talk about you, your situation, and to see if you're a good fit for us and if we're a good fit for you in terms of helping you kind of achieve your goals at the next level. So, yeah.
Perfect. So just a website visit away.
Influentialathlete.com.
Awesome. Thanks, Stephanie.
Thank you so much.